Hey guys, Walt here with TAV. What we want to start doing is some kind of like some tech talk, basically, on some of the things that we do to these trucks that bring up a lot of questions for people on why we do them, some of the specs on them, and just some general information. This information's out there, and I basically will just go and pull it from the internet. If it's very technical type stuff, I want to be able to make sure I've got my resources and my information correct for you. But we do get a lot of questions, and we want to be able to hit everybody's questions and not lose them. So what we're going to be doing now is we're doing a walk-around video on a Tundra that we just finished up. This particular truck is being shipped to Mongolia, and this client wanted, it's a kind of a heavy truck, and he wanted to have some extra power. As you know, on a lot of the trucks that we do, in what we call a stage 2 system or a stage 3 system with all of our trucks, we add a Magnuson Supercharger. We've been working with Magnuson for a long time now. We've done a lot of these Superchargers, and we pay very, very close attention to their paperwork. They have very good and thorough paperwork when it comes to installing these things. On this particular one, there's 292 steps that have to be followed, and I'm going to go through some information that of what we do with these things and why we do them, and kind of just give you some food for thought. All right, so what we're working with here is a 2018 Tundra. This is a Platinum, and it is this particular Supercharger from Magnuson is the TVS, that's Tango Victor Sierra, TVS 1900. It's for the 5.7 liter V8. This is not the flex fuel truck, which really doesn't matter if you have a flex fuel vehicle. We still do the Superchargers on those. As a matter of fact, the flex fuel truck takes a little bit less time to do because we're not swapping out fuel injectors and fuel pump and things like that. It's just a few steps less to do the flex fuel trucks. This particular one is the standard gasoline 5.7 liter. Like I said, there's 292 steps to put this Supercharger in. We like these Superchargers because they are a non-intrusive way, meaning you don't have to go into the internals of the engine to get horsepower out of it. This is a belt-driven system that bolts right onto the top of the engine to the intake of the engine. So you're actually forcing air into the engine, and you don't have to deal with pistons and all that kind of stuff. So it is a non-intrusive way of adding a great deal of horsepower and reliability to this engine. We've used these things all over the country. We've run down to the southern tip of Baja. We run 91 octane. You have to run a minimum of 91 octane in these, and we've had zero issues with fuel quality or anything like that. They've done really, really well for us. We've needed them for pulling a trailer with side-by-sides in it. Where we live, we pull a lot of long grades on the highway with heavy campers, heavy loads, trailers, whatever it may be. When you do need some extra power to pull a grade or to pass somebody, the truck just does really well, and it's instant throttle response because it's a belt drive, like a serpentine belt, similar to how your engine would be anyway, same way. It just livens the truck up. You can run it completely stock. I ran one for a while on a completely bone stock 2018 Tundra. It did really great. I loved it, especially at sea level. You do feel a difference at sea level. But this particular Supercharger on this engine puts out 543 horsepower and 535 foot-pounds of torque to the crank. Now, that is translated differently down to the wheels touching the ground, because you've got a lot of other drag going on in the transmission, transfer case, gear ratio in your differentials out to the wheels, tire diameter down to the ground. There's a lot of different factors that can change what that number is. Now, that is also with a tune that Magnuson sends to us. So, and we use their tune because we can trace that back. If there's something that comes up, there's something weird happens later, check engine light comes on, whatever it may be, we know the tune that we put in it. We can trace that back to Magnuson with a time and a date and everything of when they sent that to us and when we uploaded it to the computer of the truck. So there's reasons why we are very consistent with what Magnuson wants us to do. A couple things, like if you look at Magnuson's website, it says you could basically install this in a day. That is absolutely not true. We've done a lot of these, and they say that on a stock engine, but they also say that on every Magnuson Supercharger, on every vehicle that they they have one for. I've spoken to them and they said that is just a generalization. It's for them to basically, their techs to set this blower on top of the engine and that's it. They know that we're doing a lot of other things in here on top of their criteria that takes more time. Our real times that we clock in and clock out of every single thing we do with these engines, we notate what we've done, but the very fastest we've ever been able to do it was on a bone stock 4Runner. It took 14 hours to do. On average, it takes about 20 hours to do a supercharger very cleanly and very carefully. And if you look at this, you'll see that we put wire loom on certain things. We clean certain things up. There's a lot of other things going on in the engine that they send bracketry and stuff that is designed to fit a stock engine compartment. When we have dual battery systems, extra electrical equipment, an aftermarket front bumper where there's a winch in place that wants to take up the same location as their coolant pump that they send. So sometimes we will make a bracket and we will reroute hosing to get everything to clear without interfering with each other and making everything right. That's when it takes a little bit extra time. If someone wants us to put a supercharger in that already has a lot of that stuff done, the time it takes to do all of that is drastically more time because we have to remove everything in this area. If there's dual batteries or accessories or anything that is up in this area where all of these hoses have to be very carefully routed, we have to change some of that and we have to move things around. So you can't expect that to take a day to do. I mean, just getting all the fluids drained out of this thing and getting everything started to take apart is a solid day of work. So to get everything done very cleanly, we have real-time times that it's taken us to do all of these. And it is definitely not a single day. We've had other shops call us to see how long it takes us to do these, and we've been able to tell them because, rightfully so, a customer may want to do some research and say, well, on their website it takes a day, it takes 8 hours, whatever a day may be. That is simply not the case. So just wanted to get that out of the way because that is a question we get. The tune itself, before we do the supercharger, we scan the computer or we send what the factory this vehicle has over to Magnuson so they can look through it and make sure everything is okay and there's not an underlying problem. We've found that vehicles with higher mileage on them have an ethanol count in there that may throw a check engine light after the supercharger goes in. That is actually something that can be done beforehand, and a dealership can actually update the computer and reset some of those values so we won't run into an issue when we go to put the supercharger in later. We've kind of come across that, but we were able to get it squared away and fixed, and it wasn't an issue after the fact. But we had to learn the steps it took to go do that. Well, you can mitigate that if you can take care of it from the beginning with a higher mileage truck. Another thing is, before having a supercharger done, you should run a full tank of 91 octane through it. That's what Magnuson recommends. That way, when the truck comes in, we've already had 91 octane through the engine and everything is running like it's supposed to before we put this in, and then we run another tank of 91 octane. For instance, we had a 2018 Tundra of our own. We had long-range fuel tank it was a 46-gallon fuel tank, 37-inch tires, 37-inch mud terrain tires, 529 gear ratio in the differentials, a 50-10 camper on the bed, and I was able to do a trip from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Monument Valley to Moab, Utah to Telluride, Colorado, and back to Albuquerque. In all of those different areas, I averaged about 16 miles per gallon. The speedometer was calibrated with a Hypertech pigtail. Basically goes behind the gauge cluster and is calibrated to your physical tire size from the ground to the top of the tire, which we input, and it had the speedometer accurate to within 1 mile an hour of a GPS. So I was able to get my mileage and my gas mileage and the overall trip mileage as accurate as possible, and I averaged 16 miles per gallon to 80 miles an hour on stretches out on the highway. And it was probably about 14 to 15 miles per gallon in the city moving around. That was trail time, that was highway time, just on average, it averaged about 16 miles per gallon, which was the most fuel efficient truck we've had as a company truck. So those were real numbers as well. I know that's a question a lot of people ask, is what the fuel economy is like. And I mean, gosh, in a large truck like that with wind resistance and a large tire and rolling resistance, I think it did exceptional. I've been very happy with it. And the sound, the noise, the sound on these is actually very quiet. Some of them may sound a little louder because it's a screw design. This is a twin screw design supercharger, a root style supercharger, and you hear it. A lot of people like the whining sound of a supercharger. In our second gen Tacoma, 2009 Tacoma, the Ranger Goat, it is the loudest in that than I've heard in any other truck we've ever done. And I think by design, I've spoken to Magnuson about that as well. By design, that's just what it sounds like. On a long trip, it gets old. I mean, it just gets old. I like the sound of it. That truck will get after it. That's also on 37s with a 529 gear ratio. It's a fun truck to drive, but when you're driving the thing all over the country, it tends to get a little bit old hearing that thing. In the 4Runners, the third gen Tacomas, and the Tundras, that is simply not the case. You can hear it. If you do like that sound, you can hear it when you have your foot in it, but it's very pleasant to drive with. It's not resonating in the cab. You hear more wind noise than you would hear the Supercharger, but when you do get into it, you can hear it. And it is actually kind of a nice sound, but that's when you're really getting after it. So noise level is definitely tolerable in these, all the other vehicles other than the second gen Tacoma from my experience. Probably one of the last things to cover is when or why I would recommend putting a supercharger in a truck. You can run this supercharger in a completely stock vehicle just because you want to have a more spirited driving experience. You could definitely do that. Or in our case, when we're building these trucks to carry a load, pull a trailer, be a working platform, and you just know that it's going to be underpowered and you want to have that extra horsepower and torque. That is usually the reason why we're putting these in. From my own personal experience, where I've really liked this was I just didn't like knowing that the truck had to work hard, so often when you're pulling a long grade in the mountains, because we will see anything from close to sea level to 13,000 feet in the same trip. So you can feel the truck act differently with that too. So if you're going from Colorado to California, you will see that kind of altitude change. So pulling long grades in the mountains is one. Being able to pass around a group of people, if you are a heavier loaded truck, or if you're pulling a trailer, you are able to safely do that and quickly. Pulling through deep sand. When we were down in Baja or out in Oregon on the beach and we're heavy and we've got a large tire, but we need to pull for a long distance through sand, you can do that. You can hold a gear at a little bit higher RPM with where your power band is in a happier spot out on the beach, and you can carry a lot of momentum through deep, soft sand for a long period of time. Your truck's not hunting for gears. I know you can shift manually in a lot of vehicles, but when you've got power going to all four wheels and you've got more power than you would stock, it's nice to know that it's there. Same thing with snow, deep snow. If you're having to pull through deep snow, stop, back up, and do it again, you can do that. And you can actually feel that the truck's got that power going to the ground. These are not race cars. There are ways to tune this very supercharger with different tunes, but that's on the individual, that's on the end user, because you can go into exhaust, you can go into all these other things to create a stronger performance aspect out of the supercharger, but that's a different tune. You'd probably want to put it on a dyno at that point and really dive into the computer and change some parameters. But we are not engine tuners, we're not engine builders. We don't want to be, because there's subject matter experts out there that do that all the time. The capability is there for you if you want to do that, and we actually use someone here in town that has a dyno that can do that for us, but that's on the individual that would want that. What we're doing and what we have found really, really good results with is the tune that Magnuson sends us. We can put that in and we can validate all of that on our own. We will be going to the dyno just because I'm curious to see what our Tacoma has. It's a 2009 and it's got about 140,000 miles on it now. So I'd like to see where it's at. But those are my recommendations of why you would possibly want to run a supercharger. long pulls through sand, snow, long grade pulls with heavyweight trailers, things like that, heavy truck. The ability to get out and around traffic or even get out of a bad situation. It's just nice to know that it's there. As soon as you push the throttle pedal, it's there. It's instant. There's no turbo lag. There's no turbo. There's no turbo lag with that. It's instantaneous. And you know, that's kind of why I would recommend to someone if they had a heavier vehicle. And with that being said, hope this was you know, a little bit of knowledge for you on why we do things the way we do. I know we've gotten these questions a number of times in the past. This video is there solely for reference material, just based on things that we've done with these trucks. We're putting this one out now. We've got more to come, and hope you guys like it. We're going to try to do more of the tech videos on why we're doing some of these things with these builds, and just stay tuned on that. Obviously here on YouTube, but check out our website, tavllc.com. Give us a call at the shop. The guys can run you through some of these other questions, or they can put together an estimate for you. If you'd like to do a more of an in-depth consultation, the guys up front can kind of set you up with that. I will schedule some time on the calendar to sit down and just kind of pick your brain on what your build will look like, and what we can kind of put together, what we know works right for that kind of scenario. There's a process that we can take that can hopefully streamline your build process. So hit us up on tavllc.com. Check us out on Instagram, at tavllc, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks a lot.